All right, everybody, I am back from seeing the full version of The Flash, and I am going to give you my review on the full version of the film versus the fan version I saw about a month ago. That review is already up, and you can go find that in my movie reviews, and I'm going to encourage you to go back and watch it after I'm done with this review. And this will be 100% spoiler-free. All right, so let's talk about this movie. The first thing I want to talk about are the changes from the fan version that I saw a month ago to this version here. There were no changes. It was the exact same film. When they said that they were fixing the special effects, it was a lie. It was more studio spin. And they knew they weren't changing it, yet they told everybody that it was going to be enhanced for the full version. And it was not. We were even being told we were seeing a version that was not complete. The only thing that has changed was the credits. There were no credits in the fan version I saw a month ago, and there was no post-credit scenes. This had one post-credit scene with Aquaman and Barry, the one that everyone's been talking about. There was supposedly a second one where Barry met up with a dog version of Aquaman. That is not there. I don't know where that came from. People said that. It got picked up online. There's only one post-credit scene. And what's irritating about this is the fact that Barbara Muschietti came out last week or the week before and said everybody was going to be blown away and that they had something very special for the fans in that post-credit scene. That was another lie. Okay, everything that has come from the studio for the advertising of this film up until the release has been a lie. You cannot dispute that at this point. Everything has been there to sell tickets. They're trying to sell as many tickets as they can to get a return on their investment. Well, they didn't invest the money. Their investors invested the money. But let's talk about The Flash. So I did change my rating the second time seeing it, and I will tell you I enjoyed it a lot more the second time. So here's what I loved about the film. First of all, it is definitely the two Batmans in the film that stole it. Ben Affleck as Batman again was amazing, except for the very final scene with him at the beginning of the movie. That very final moment with him as Batman is horrible. Okay, it is one of the most it's the cringiest thing in the whole film. It just is. And the costume at that point was awful either. Now, I noticed that this weird thing he had on his chest was over the regular Batman outfit. So it looked like he just had some extra armor on. Everybody's been talking about how they didn't like that design. And I looked real closely on the second viewing, and it's just the regular suit underneath. This was just more armor for what he was dealing with. But amazing scenes with him at the beginning. In fact, I will tell you that the first 25 to 30 minutes of this movie is the best part of the entire film. It's the first time you go into one of these DC films and you feel like everything is connected, everything is good. You know these characters, their world building. It's great. Only to have everything changed with The Flash. So, first of all, I'm going to mention something here first of all, I'm going to mention a few things before I talk about the other Michael Keaton being back as Batman. I want to talk about two other things that people were very curious about. First of all, someone had told me that Ben Affleck was not in the credits and they wanted me to confirm. And it is true. Ben Affleck and another character that was in this film, they were not in the credits at all, which is weird because Ben Affleck was clearly in quite a bit of the opening sequence. So I am not sure why he was not in the credits, but he, in fact, is not in the credits to be found anywhere. And the other thing people were wondering, is this canon to Zack Snyder's Justice League? And I can definitively say, yes, it is. There are two definitive references to Zack Snyder's Justice League in this film. The first is when Barry is talking to Bruce Wayne shortly after the beginning of the film, and he's talking about going back to save his mom. And they have a discussion about how Barry was able to go back a whole day in a previous sequence, but he had gone back only for a second, or he went back a minute, but he was able to go back. Yeah, he went back a whole day, but The first time he did it, he only went back 1 second, and that's the second when everything blew up in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So, and they make a direct reference to that Russian city. So it is canon. There is no question about it. And I kind of confirmed this with the comic book back when the prequel comic came out. Also, there is, Barry has a scene with Iris in the first half an hour where she confirms, well, she tells him, he says, I haven't seen you since college. And she's like, I think I saw you like 2 years ago, referencing that scene that was not in the theatrical version of Justice League, but was in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So it is canon. Everybody can rest easy. Zack Snyder's Justice League is canon. You can throw out that theatrical version. It's garbage. You never have to watch it again. All right, so let's get back to the review. Michael Keaton definitely was the star of this film. Everything with him was amazing except his entrance. It is goofy. That's one thing I talked about in my original review, and I'm going to talk about what I don't like here in just a few minutes. But Michael Keaton is awesome to see on screen. He has the second best Batman sequence ever filmed outside of the scene in the warehouse scene in Batman vs. Superman. It's pretty awesome to see him do his stuff. He looks great for his age. He came out, kicked butt, and was awesome. And then you have Ezra Miller. His performance, amazing. He does an amazing job playing two different Barrys, and that was really cool. And there was a very emotional aspect to this film towards the beginning and at the end. But that's the rest of what I could say was good about this film. Most of this film has more negative aspects to it. First of all, there is no amazing theme for The Flash. Instead, anytime he does anything amazing, like at the beginning and at the end, they play rock music. That was not changed. I think there was one less song, or maybe two less songs. That might have been what's changed from the first version that I saw. But there were two rock songs at two very important scenes, and which should have had an amazing score to it. But they decided to do rock music, so he has no theme. The biggest letdown is that there is just way, way too much comedy in this film. It has more comedy than any other DC film in the DCEU. They went all out to make this as funny as possible. There are a few very cringy type jokes. Most of them are okay, and some of them are just ridiculous, okay? And it's sad that this movie that was based off of a very serious comic with a very serious tone was turned into a joke, especially with the second Barry. And that's another aspect of this. They spend so much time with Barry and Barry in the middle of the film that the third act of this film feels thrown together. Zod just is... You can tell that Michael Shannon was not there for this. Like, he definitely didn't give his all. He was nothing like the Zod in Man of Steel. It's like they had to take this, to connect everything, they had to take an event out of Man of Steel to throw them into just as a means to an end to further the story. And so the third act is very much rushed. This film was already almost 2.5 hours to begin with. It really could have done with another half an hour to 45 minutes worth of storytelling to make it all mesh together the way it should. And there were some inconsistencies with the Flash's ability. There was one scene where, and I'm not going to say who did this or what the context is, where he's able to phase through a floor and then his clothes, he's naked on the other side, but then he phases a little while later and his clothes are still on him, which is inconsistent with what they were showing in the film. So there's a few things like that aren't good. And then the CGI is really not very good. And the studio came out today, the director and Andy Muschietti said that was on purpose. It was what the look they were going for in the movie. It was not that they weren't done with the special effects, that in fact that was the look of the film, and it was a creative decision. So they went with a lower budget. In fact, that whole final sequence looks like it was filmed on a soundstage. It was not out, like Man of Steel was actually out in the desert. Well, the sequence with Zod meeting Man of Steel, that was out in a real desert. It was real people. It was real tanks. It was real. This was all CGI. Everything looked CGI. It did honestly look very artificial and did not have the look or the feel of what Man of Steel had. And so it didn't have that real feel to it at all. It's like you were watching a cut scene out of a video game or something like that. And then another complaint I have is the fact that Supergirl is not in it for very long. They take way too long to get to her, And she's not in very much of the movie, and they don't give her much to do when they could have had. Like I said, if I was in charge of this, I would have changed things up. You could still have the Barry and Barry aspect that went on for too long and still shortened it and still had the rest of the movie to tell more story and still get the point across. It really was not told in the best fashion possible. There are definitely some scenes that were changed on Gunn's order, and you'll see that when you see the movie. And with the post-credit scene, now here's the other thing that this film does not do. Everyone said that this is a complete reset for the DC universe, and it certainly is not. This is not going to segue right into Superman Legacy. That didn't happen in this movie. Nothing is erased or taken away. Things may not be exactly as they're supposed to be, but it's not that it's gone or that they're going in a completely different direction, which means this is all going to have to take place with Aquaman 2 in explaining how they're going to go from this universe into the DCU. Like, there's going to have to be some explaining, because it's not going to make sense not based off of The Flash. This was not a complete erasing of the DCEU, and people need to understand that going in. So at the end of the day, on my last review, I gave this 2 to 2.5 stars. I've upped that by 1 star. I would give it 3.5 stars, but I won't go above that. There are just too many flaws with this movie, but there are some good aspects to it. If you're going in for the nostalgia, you're going to love it. There is some eye candy. Some people will enjoy this cheaper CGI. They're going to enjoy the cheaper look and the humor. Some people are really going to enjoy that, and kudos to them if that's what they like, but that's not my cup of tea. So there's my full review on The Flash. I'm going to do a full spoiler review this weekend, and so you can look for that at some point. And I'm going to talk more about the studio deception tomorrow in my DC update. So look for that tomorrow. I do appreciate it. We will see you on the next video.